Fellas, in today's video, I'll be showing you how to play Storm in Marvel Rivals. This will cover tips, tricks, and her abilities to help you improve, whether that's in pubs or in ranked matches. The Season 1 buff to her was the perfect Storm to make her one of the best heroes to use now. So let's get on with how to use her. But first, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Marvel Rivals. And let me know what you want to see next. Now, let's get into it. Storm is a long-range focused duelist who is good for damaging enemies in clusters thanks to her piercing attacks and her buff up to nearby allies, while overall having great movement. Before, her damage fall off made her a character you had to make work, but now she does great damage at range and shreds closer up. Presently, for positioning, staying in the back behind the tanks while you buff and deal damage will be a great way to go, especially for starting out. However, the flies in the air don't get attacked all that often, so while positioning will always be important, you have a lot more grace as to where you want to be attacking from, whether it's behind the tanks in the back line or high up in the air. And so in this gameplay here, I do spend a lot of time behind the enemy tanks. I spend a lot of time up in the air holding objectives, and then as a general I tend to be just a little bit higher than the rest of the team, so what you do and how you play will of course depend on the situation at hand. Storm does make a great offensive in the back, as well as a great standalone hero as long as you're higher up. For her base attack we have the Wind Blade. What this does, you send a blade of wind forward, very straightforward. However, it does pierce, and now it hits for 55 damage as a Season 1. So this goes about 150 meters a second, and you can fire off twice a second as well. As far as I could tell, there does not appear to be any range she cannot hit from. However, her attacks are not hit scan, nor are they tracked, so the odds of you hitting someone moving around from far away isn't very great. Well, this does hit for 55 damage up close. After 20 meters, that's when the damage fall off starts to happen. And then this has a larger damage drop off around 40 or so meters. So you can be extraordinarily far away and still do great damage, which will be great for long hallways, and your blades still pierce regardless, which is fantastic for, again, clusters of people, long hallways, objectives, anything that would let you get in multiple hits. And then we have our second attack, Bolt Rush. Very straightforward. You can hit enemies up to 40 or so meters for 80 damage. It does have an 8-second cooldown, so this is great for chain attacks and landing a big amount of damage on the enemy. Very similar to your base attack, this also pierces, meaning you'll be able to get in big plays and big damage. It doesn't take too long to get off, but it does have a little bit of delay, so use it wisely during a fight, but do definitely use it. One more thing to cover is that you do have a practice range within the practice range, where you could come down and set up parameters for what you want, whether the targets are the robots or any hero, and then they could be moving at a distance, anything like that, and the control switch is to activate them. So this will be a good way to get in practice on moving targets that aren't just the robots. So now the next two abilities are tricky to learn, so I suggest playing around in the practice arena at first just to get the hang of them. So with the shift button, you get weather control. You could choose between two always active abilities within a 15-meter radius of you, and that is either for movement or damage. So with the tornado bonus, you move 16% faster. Your allies will move 8% faster as long as they're within this ring radius. And then of course, the higher up you go, the smaller that radius is. And then for the damage, you can switch to the Thunder buff. That will let you do 16% more damage and your allies will do 8% more, again with the radius. So you do need to keep your enemies or allies within the radius in order to get the most active effect of it, which can be a little bit tricky to do, especially with the movement one, as you do move faster than your allies. And so this can be a little bit tricky to get the hang of, as you will move about 8% faster than your allies. And this will vary again as well, depending on your height. Now I mentioned two abilities because there is two. The next one we have is Goddess Boost. With the movement boost, however, this time it is 40% faster for yourself and 20% faster for your allies. And then for damage, you do a bonus 30, while your allies do a bonus 12. This duration will last 8 seconds, as you can see on the right, with a cooldown of 15 seconds. With the tornado, as you can see beneath these enemies, they do have that black vortex. That is the slowdown effect that's applied to them, making them slower and thus easier to hit. And with the thunder effect, this will bring down lightning strikes that hit the enemies every 2 or so seconds for a bonus 35 damage. The movement buff is perfect for getting your team onto an objective or from coming back from like respawn. It also makes your team slightly harder to hit during choke points or big team fights. And then for me, I don't really see a difference in the speed boost. I know that there is and I can feel it, but overall 16% just really isn't all that much. That's primarily due to your base speed being 6 meters a second. With a 40% boost, yes, you can feel that 40%, but with a 16% speed boost, 16% of 6 really isn't all that great, but every little bit helps. The movement buff is perfect for getting your team onto an objective or when coming back from respawn, especially if you do have a team with you. And it's also a great time to use your goddess buff just so that you can get people back faster. It's also good for getting your team to be slightly harder to hit. And then with the damage, whether you're on offense or defense, this will help turn the tides of battle in your favor. Now it's the attack buff, I think, where Storm really shines on her team. On objectives and choke points, especially on the back line by the tanks, this damage buff will make it easier to fend off the attackers, especially if you're using the goddess boost with it for that extra damage. Now this is not a con to Storm, just something that you will need to keep in mind. The regular weather boost of 8% bonus damage is not a great amount. Even for yourself with the damage buff, your base attack does 55. That bonus buff is an additional 4.4 damage. So per hit, that does not do much for damage, but every little bit adds up, especially the more players you have in your field. On objectives and choke points, but especially on the back line by the tanks, this damage buff will make it easier to fend off attackers. And you do get assists for your team every time they do get a kill when they're in your buff. You already do shred up close, but that bonus 30 damage and lightning attack bonus from the goddess buff will make you a real force of nature. Lastly, we have her ultimate, the Omega Hurricane. You turn into a big hurricane, draw nearby enemies, and deal damage. With this, you get a radius of about 15 or so meters to choose from, and then you turn into a giant tornado, sucking things in and dealing damage. When you do use your ultimate, you do get a bonus 450 health and overshield. That does not go away right away. Now it slowly fades away, about 100 health every second. Your weather effects are turned off during the ult, just so that you are aware of it. It lasts about 5 or so seconds, and you do hit twice per second with a damage of about 75. So this is great for disrupting, a little bit of crowd control, and unlike some of the other ults, this one is a great opener, a great finisher, or even in the middle of combat. And then lastly, we have our team up ability with Thor. You get an electrifying enchantment. Storm gets a bonus attack. Oh, there's a grammatical error. This game is unplayable. Barrage period with no space. The attack is called Charge Scale. It can hit enemies up to 60 meters away for 55 damage. And this will hit 3 times as long as the enemies are within 5 meters of each other, but it only hits a target once. With a 15-second cooldown, this is very useful for breaking up the enemy backline. It's a very powerful attack, with a quickish cooldown allowing you to use it fairly often. It is better to use on a cluster of enemies over just a single opponent, as your second attack will be better in that case since it does more damage and pierces. So that's the gist of her abilities. Let's see how they play out in an actual game. With Storm, the verticality is great for mobility, but the trade-off is being an easy target for snipers. If you don't have good situational awareness yet, you will learn it rather fast while playing in the sky. This does not mean you should be afraid to be airborne. Ambushing the enemy team from above is something Storm excels at, and with her goddess buff, this will let you take down the surprised enemies with ease. And so from this gameplay, I spent a good amount of it behind our tanks in the backline, as well as high in the air above the objective, and both were great plays. Where you position her will depend on what's happening at that time in the game and what you're doing. Being high up in the air allowed me to see the Spider-Man that was trying to get the objective, as well as to take down our tank, Penny Parker. Storm will shine more with a coordinated team, but even solo queues with enough attention to your team, you can use her speed buff to help close the gap or to make the push needed, and then you could change to the damage buff once you're on top of the enemy team to get in that extra damage. Storm definitely was underrated in the previous season, but now I'm starting to see more and more of them a lot more frequently. They work great in many team compositions and offers a diverse setup combination with many characters. Penny Parker again is a fantastic matchup, with Storm letting the damage buff really shine on Penny's toolkit. While you do get a lot of hits and damage in, your playstyle will vary depending on if you have cleanup support on your team or not. If you do, Rapidly hitting anyone on the other team so the others can clean up is a great tactic, but if you don't have that, you also want to make sure that you do kill your targets. Otherwise, you're just ensuring the other team's healers will be doing a lot of healing. This may work if the healers aren't good or maybe in low ranks, but as a general, doing a lot of damage doesn't actually do much if there isn't any elimination going on, whether that's from you or another hero. If you've been playing Storm before Season 1 and are wanting more insight thanks to the new season, there really isn't going to be much difference with how you will end up playing them. It simply allows her to be more lethal, more consistently, although you may have some issues with her basic attack at first, just for a small period, while you adjust to the new speed difference. If you are running with another player, Namor will be a great pick for them, as he's already a beefy fish that doesn't need much, but will completely utilize the bonus damage from Storm. Loki is another great choice, depending if you play Storm more in the backline. His healing and field control will benefit and complement Storm nicely. With her boosted damage and Loki's ability to heal, this will allow you to defend objectives and choke points with ease. Unlike Iron Man or Star-Lord, Storm does not have other mobility tools aside from her weather boost. For the first little bit that you do play as Storm, it can feel odd with her movement, but that settles down after a bit. I would suggest that you do spend some time in the practice range, as ascending and descending with the controls will do you so much better than pointing down and then going forward, since you do miss out on what's happening on the field and any attackers that might be coming in. Overall, I think Storm is a nice pick for any strategists out there who are branching out into other classes, and in general an excellent pick for anyone. You can do damage from far away and provide buffs to your allies. She offers a lot of utility. Aside from her ultimate, Storm does not have much self-sustain, no defenses, and no real burst potential. You can get in good combos between her basic attack and her second attack, as well as her basic attack and her team up ability. Learning to properly chain those will allow you to get in some quick kills. Storm is a DPS, a duelist, though they really shine as a distance fighter, which allows them to avoid any damage as possible while still being able to do a good amount back. And with that, that's a wrap on this Storm guide in Marvel Rivals. Did you find this guide helpful? Have any tips of your own that you think more people should know? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, hit that like button if you're still watching, subscribe for more videos like this if you haven't already, and stay tuned for the next one.